Okay, you're good to go?
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the Talk to Danielle podcast. I am your host, Danielle C. Baker. And before I introduce my guest for today, don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe to the channel that you're listening to or watching, depending on which platform you are on. And today I am very excited. I always say this, I have an amazing guest, but the work that she does is really nice. I love watching her, love her books. I have the lovely Jane Keightley on, the author of two amazing books. She's a children's book author, and I will just roll right in and just watching her and hearing her will do all the rest. I won't have to say much. So thank you so much, Jane, for joining me today. I'm really excited to have you on.
It's a pleasure. I'm really happy to be here. So thanks for inviting me.
Yes, thank you. And you are a children's books writer. You do write for young readers, which is something that we are all advocates for. We just love to promote reading and finding new ways to get children into reading. So, can you tell us just before we get started about all the work the beautiful work that you do? Can you just briefly share your story and how you got to where you are today?
I certainly will. Well, yeah, as you say, I'm a children's author and I write educational fiction for 3 to 7-year-olds. The two books that I've written are Blast Off to Planet Fun, that's the first one, and then Jamming in the Jungle. So I always was interested in literacy and creative writing, but I knew that when I left school, I didn't have the life experience to be able to become an author. So I've got a very varied skill set. I went to work in London and I went to study in Oxford, and I did hotel management and then sales management for many years. And then I was PA to the chief executive of a chain of health clubs in London for 12 years. And then I went to live in Greece. And then I ran a designer children's wear shop. And latterly, I worked at Keepmoat Stadium, which is a football stadium. We had a foundation that supported, it was like the charity arm, that the money that they made from football, they gave back to the community. So I did, some administration with them. And then in lockdown, things changed because I was made redundant. I was furloughed for 6 months and then made redundant. And because I'd always wanted to be a children's author, suddenly I had time and the inclination, so I started to write. So I wrote Blast Off to Planet Fun and published that, and then wrote Jamming in the Jungle, and then I'm busy with the third book, which I'll tell you about later.
Yes, that's exciting. And I love it. And I invite everybody to go have a look at those books. They're just beautifully illustrated, and a beautiful story. Can you, you kind of answered the question about how you were influenced to write the children's book, but can you tell us about how Smudge, because those are all Smudges' adventure, how a Smudge came to be?
Let me introduce you to Smudge. Here he is.
Yes.
The reason for Smudge is I have 3 children, and we had a pug puppy called Mr. Pickles, who was adorable. And he used to sit on my knee and start snoring immediately. And I said, how can you be asleep? How can you snore? You haven't had time to sleep. And it kind of got me thinking about, what is this little guy dreaming about? So the stories are, every time Smudge goes to sleep, he has a different dream. So the first time he dreams he goes through the solar system and lands on Planet Fun. It tells them all about the fun that he has up there. And then he smiles as he remembers what he's done and the many happy memories of his trip to Planet Fun. And then at the back of the book, it always tells you where they're going to the next book. So it says, if you're brave enough to discover and explore, we're heading to the jungle. So that was Jamming in the Jungle. And at the end of this book, it tells them where it's going next. And it's like reverse psychology, that the children put the pressure on parents to say, I want to know where he goes next. I want the next book. So that's that. But and then I found an illustrator in Sheffield, which is about 45 minutes from me, and I asked her to do a pug and a French bulldog, because they're the 2 top breeds that children like. And she did the French bulldog first, and she sent me this image of Smudge, which is like just a fawn coloured French bulldog with loads of lovely patches all over him. I said, that's it. Just let me do you the pug. I said, no, that's Smudge, let's go with that. And she's great, because what I do is I write the story and then I send her a PowerPoint presentation of each page, all the words, and then what's in my head and how I'd like her to interpret it. And then I just give her a free rein, because she's the creative artistic one. I mean, it would take me a month to draw Smudge and it wouldn't really be very good. And I honestly believe that some people can write and illustrate, but the majority of us can either write or draw. So, you know, in my head, never the twain should meet. And I'd far rather pay an illustrator who is creative to make those words come to life than have a go at doing it myself, because it really wouldn't work. So then she has the artistic license to develop the illustrations, and she's fantastic. And she really does. I just said, make them fun and make the words come to life. And she does that really, really well. So yeah, that's how I found Nicola, and that's how Smudge was born, really.
Oh no, that's incredible. And it's also wonderful when you find an illustrator that works well with you and that you don't have to worry about whether or not they'll be able to bring out your characters the way you have them in your head. You know, they're able to put that in the paper. Now, I think while you were showing Smudge, I think the camera may have been on me, so I'm going to stop talking and see if you could show him again in case people missed it. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, can we see Smudge now?
Yes.
The children absolutely adore him. So it really helps, you know, when I go to do author visits and workshops, they really engage with him and they all want to stroke him and hug him and kiss him. And he's great for getting them absolutely involved in the story, because they can see Smudge and it kind of links the two together. So he's a great tool to engage them in learning and you know, keep their attention, really, because some of the little ones, when you're reading that book, it's maybe 3 or 4 minutes, and that's long enough for them to sit, often in an assembly on a cold wooden floor. So anything that we can use to, you know, the intonation of your voice and movement and things to hold their attention. But Smudge is the best thing, because I have somebody with me and they're going round, you know, and they totally get then when I'm reading the story that it's that guy that, you know, is the main character. So it really works.
That's wonderful, and it is important to have that character that will keep the children engaged in the story, and that leads into my to my next question, where what are some of the simple ways? You've mentioned some of them, but I don't know if you could elaborate a little bit more from your experience. What are some simple ways that we can get children involved or more interested in reading?
I think the first thing is just to make it fun, to make it a pleasure and not a chore. And I think to start early. I read to my children when they were in the womb, and I've read to them every day since until they were old enough. And even when they're old enough to read themselves, you know, to encourage them to read aloud and to sit with them, because, you know, I really believe it's learned behaviour and you should lead by example. And my 3 are not children anymore. My son's 21, my other son's 19, and they've both done A-level English, and my daughter's just doing a GCSEs and she's predicted to get a grade 9 for it. So I just believe that, you know, they've inherited my love of words and literacy, and that's not by chance. That's because they've been immersed in books since before they were born. And, you know, even in cost of living crisis, there's never been a budget for books. And my Sol, my eldest son, he used to love the Beast Quest and Sea Quest series. And he's got the lot. He's got 84 Beast Quests and 8 Sea Quest books. And at some point, they'll be quite valuable because he has the whole collection. And back in the day, they were maybe £5 a book, and he used to read them in an hour. And then we had to wait for the next one to come out. But, you know, I've just always, and library visits, that's a great thing to do, you know, because there's all kinds of events. I do events at libraries, but just to take your child and just really encourage them to love literacy and books. I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah, you're right. It is a learned behavior, and we can't expect children to just be able to sit and listen to the story when they start it, even before they have words, before their vocabulary is developed. You could get it started, and then it does help. I worked in schools and childcare centers. A lot of parents are worried that if their children are struggling with reading, there's a lot of pressure on children when they're learning to read. So would you have any advice that you could share for children who struggle with reading, any sort of modification that we could do, whether you're a teacher or a parent, that we can modify the way we teach reading to help the children that may be showing some struggle.
Yeah, I think probably there's a few things. Use movement when you're telling stories, you know, your hands and your feet, and bring the story alive. And then your intonation and your voice and the way you tell a story, and a different voice for each character is important. I think encourage them to read things that they're interested in. Let them choose the books. I mean, if you have a child that really enjoys books, mix it up and introduce different genres. But I think for a child who's reluctant to read and they love dinosaurs, give them loads of dinosaur books. You know, it doesn't really matter what they read at an early age, as long as they're having that experience. So I'd definitely say let them choose. What else? I think maybe act out a story, you know, get them involved in it, and maybe do a project and a log, you know, so they actually can see which books they've read and how often they're reading. So I think there's all kinds of ways that you can introduce them. While I was on furlough, so I was being paid, but I wasn't working during lockdown, I actually wrote a book about Donny Dog, who is the mascot for Doncaster Rovers, where I worked, because I'm a literacy champion with the National Literacy Trust. And that I've looked into a lot of statistics and done some research, and it's mainly boys that struggle to, you know, between 3 and 7, that aren't particularly as interested in reading. So I wrote in rhyme again. I wrote a book about Donny Dog and his, you know, on match day and all the kind of things he does, you know, just because I think anything, even the football program, a comic, you know, they don't necessarily, I think maybe a lot of parents, you know, insist that the children read and maybe giving them inappropriate books. I think the main thing to do is to keep it fun and keep it light and get them involved, and, you know, really encourage them that you know, maybe give family and friends a book as a gift. I mean, I give mine away and personalize them and sign them, and people are really happy to receive that. So I think it's about making books cool. Yeah, that's the answer. And if everybody thinks they're cool, then they'll do it. So it's finding ways to make reading awesome, and then you've got them all hooked.
Yeah, I think that's great, because you said that, and that reminded me when I was pregnant with my first one. I was given books from authors I didn't know, I had never heard of, and they were some of the best books. Even my children now, I have 2 boys as well, and I can see them fighting over that collection of books, saying, "Oh, I want this one. I want this one to read to my children." So that introduction to new authors and new genres. And the one thing I'm going to note, you talked about logging how many books you write. I think I've never thought of that, but that's a great idea, because you can encourage the children to say, "Look, we've read so many." Yeah. It's, you know, we had fun, because the children feel the pressure, and especially if they have friends who are doing very well with their reading skills. So I like that idea of just logging. I think
if you read 1 book a day to your child the first 5 years of life, it's 1,825 books by the 5th birthday.
Wow.
You know, it's good stuff.
I
great. Did poetry jam on Thursday night. I travelled an hour to a library on the coast, and it was for 2 hours, and everybody went reading poetry and different literacy and things that they'd written. And I was talking to a couple there, because she was going to have a baby in 3 weeks, and they bought one of my books, and the age group is 3 to 7. But I said, you know, they're never too young, you know, for you to read to them. And I said, "Have you been reading to your baby?" And she said, "No." And I said, "Well, do, because you can, baby, you know, if you two sit calmly in the nursery and read a story, you know, it's downtime and they can understand your voice." And they said, "Right, tonight," and they bought a book and they went and they were going to read it. So it's all about encouraging children and educating parents as well. I heard on the radio recently that a father had said, "Oh, I don't want my son to read. It's a girl's thing. I don't want him getting involved in reading." And you just think, how can that child then, you know, just thrive really and use his imagination and everything? Right. If his parents telling him it's not cool to read, it is. It's absolutely I think it's the best gift you can give your child, a book and your time to read it with them. I honestly believe that's the very best gift you can give to a child.
Oh, I absolutely agree. And I'm happy you mentioned that, because it's so much more than just reading words on the page for children. comes in with the critical thinking, there's so much you could do, problem solving, creativity, all of that is so important.
And
And it's
that
not just for
bonding
girls.
time where they have, I mean, children love routine. So you give them a
Yeah.
bath and then you cuddle up with them and you have a story and then they're really calm and they go off to sleep. And
Yeah.
I remember, I mean, mine are 21, 19 and 15, but I remember vividly. And at one time I had all three of them together reading them a book. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm a massive Dr. Seuss fan. I loved it in my childhood and we've carried it on and they're Dr. Seuss fans too. In fact, at my son's christening, my brother read an excerpt from Oh, the Places You'll Go.
Oh, yes.
And I love that. You've got shoes on your feet, you've got brain in your head, and you can go anywhere you choose. And it's so true.
Yeah.
And he's flown through his education and he's now doing a forensic science degree at university. And he's got in touch with one of the guest speakers who came to give a talk at his university. And he's got a job when he's finished. And he's absolutely flying. And I honestly believe that some of that is because he was immersed in books. And I think academically it helps them because it kind of it gives them more vocabulary and it gives them a wider perspective on the world. And then socially it helps them because it lets them be more empathetic and just interpret situations differently. And I honestly believe it helps the mental health, the self-esteem and the confidence. I think it's so much more than reading a book.
It is. It really is. And I love that book, All the Places You Go. I gave my sons that book for their graduation, high school graduation. That's the book I gave them because the world is just open to you. And I love it. We're going to talk about, because you do some great work beyond the book. It's not just reading the book, but the story continues in so many other forms. But before we get into what you do, I'd like to know from your experience, what are some of the most unusual ways you've seen reading being promoted and the impact that's had on the children?
Well, I think author visits and workshops. When you collaborate with companies, I think that's really a valuable tool for the children. I collaborate with 3 different companies, Lion Learners, and they actually have real life jungle critters and creatures. So we go in with snakes and geckos and stick insects and hissing cockroaches, and the children love them. So I read Jamming in the Jungle, then we have a question and answer session, and then they actually get to hold all the animals that they've read about, that I've read to them about in the book. And then we send in advance, we send the activity sheets and the creative writing prompts that are in the back of the book. So it's a whole session then. So they have the story, the Q&A, then they get for half an hour to hold all of the animals, and then they do the written work and do an acrostic poem, and we sit and help them with them. And it's a whole morning then about jungle life, and that's really good. I think just to find different ways, rather than just sit and read them a book, it's kind of thinking outside the box and doing different things. I also do workshops with Lab Rascals, who are a scientific company who go into schools to do experiments and everything, but she has a planetarium. And as part of Blast Off to Planet Fun, I wrote a Funky Planet rap, and each verse tells them about the characteristics of each planet, and then at the end it spells out the names of the planets. So it teaches them in song, so they can sing along and get involved. It teaches them all about the rap. So we've put that into the planetarium, so as they can hear the rap, they can see the planets as we're rapping about them. They can see them on a big screen. So that certainly helps them. And again, then we do the activities in the back of the book and have the Q&A, and we read Blast Off to Planet Fun. And then the workshop that they absolutely love is I'm friends with a graphic designer who does spray art. So I read both books, and then we do a Q&A, and then we get them spray painting either a wall at the venue, either the school or the library, an outside wall. So he does an outline, and then they fill it in with the spray, or we do it on big boards. And then we leave them for the schools or venues, libraries to mount them inside. So they've got the value of the work that the children have done, and they can keep looking at it. But I just think, just to do different things with them, to totally immerse them. So it all goes back to making reading and learning fun. And that's what we do.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And that's what I love about the work that you do, is just, it goes even further than anybody would ever think,
Yeah.
because even just to have the creative writing prompts at the end of the book is great, because it gets the children are already into the story. They're already been transported to this other world, and then they can just jot down all the ideas that they have, and
And then they all want
get
to be an author. After speaking to an author, they go, I want to write a book. And I said, let me help you. And they go, will you? I said, yes, sure I will. And we just get really involved in it all. I'm going on Thursday, I'm going to a local library because they have an autistic group of children, and it's storytelling month. So I'm going to read them Blast Off to Planet Fun because it's a space theme, and then do all kinds of activities with them just for an hour, because I'm my main job is an author, so I do paid visits to places, but I'm also a literacy champion, which is a charity. So a lot of my work, I just go out because I've had a successful career and I live in a beautiful barn conversion, and it's all about making a difference now and giving something back. So yeah, I still charge reasonable price for different author visits, but also in my hat with the literacy champion, I'll go out and do different events and just give my time. I'm actually on the organisation committee for the Doncaster Pride. We have a family zone, a big marquee where we run literacy events. And all of that time is given because it's about getting families and celebrating our differences. And we gave 800 books away last year, you know, and it's the little children love to take a book away, but they're coming with teenage siblings. They go, no, I don't read. And I said, let's have a look. And we read the blurb at the back, and they go, no. I said, what about this one? And we keep going and trying, and they leave with a book. I mean, whether or not they read it, it's up to them. But we've done our bit then when we ask them and encourage them to choose a book, and they actually leave the marquee with it. You're kind of halfway there, and you hope that when they have that book in the hand, and we've talked about how much fun it's going to be, that, you know, they'll give it a chance. So I'd say about half and half is paid work, and then half as a literacy champion. I'd just go and give my time for free, because I think, you know, we have a responsibility to educate the children and to get them interested in reading and learning.
Yeah, and you kind of touched a very important point there, where it's especially for author visits, because it's more and more authors will do that, and it's not just to get the children involved, but it really does have an impact on the community itself, because it reaches out to the families. So can you just kind of tell us what positive things you see out of your author visits when you see that everybody's really getting into it and finding a new passion for reading?
Yeah. And as I said before, it is about educating the parents. If you can get them on board, then they will read to the children. I spoke at a conference, a communications conference recently, and that was bridging the gap in literacy as a result of lockdown, because the children had lost the social skills and they'd lost that reading and learning that they had in school, because there were set tasks to do. But again, it depends on the parents and how committed they are and how busy they were. So I spoke for 20 minutes about how to bridge the gap in literacy and things that teachers and parents can do to bring the children up to the level that they'd missed for those 2 years. And that was really fun. So yeah, that's another thing I do, you know, speak at events, and then I'm doing writing courses. So I do them physically and virtually, you know, to teach adults how to write picture books. And then I have an illustrating friend, and she teaches them about the illustration. And then I talk about the various routes to publication, because there's so many, the traditional route and hybrid and self-publishing, and it just opens people's eyes to the world of words, really. So I do all kinds of things to encourage adults as well as children to be involved in literacy.
Yeah, and it's just beautiful to see as well that everybody gets involved, and it just goes beyond, and it's wonderful. That kind of brings me, because you're talking about all the things that you do, and how do you find balance between work, life, visits, workshops, all of that? What do you do to keep yourself balanced?
Well, I think work-life balance is very, very important, but I also love what I do. And as they say, if you love what you do, you never do a day's work in your life. So, you know, I don't feel that, you know, that the balance is wrong, because I thoroughly enjoy what I do. And my children are independent now, and they're off doing their own thing. My son comes home at weekends, and my other son, you know, is based at home, but he has his own life. My daughter, you know, she does her own thing. So, you know, I spend much of my time, you know, preparing for events and emailing and writing, and because that's what I love to do. But it is important. You do need that downtime. So maybe 7 or 8 o'clock at night, I'll log off, and then I've got a kitten. He's my best therapy. So I just play with him and stroke him and cuddle him, and he's great. But I do think it is important for work-life balance, especially when your children are younger. But as mine are adult children now, so it just gives me the freedom to do what I want. And what I really want to do is immerse myself in literacy. So it's never an issue for me, really. But I would say to people, you know, that work-life balance is incredibly important, and it's getting that right just for you, really. And everybody's different.
Yeah, you're right. There is no cookie cutter way of finding that balance. You need to find what's right with you, for you. And that may change over the course of whatever's happening in your life, to be mindful of how you're feeling in all of that. So it's wonderful. What kind of advice, I like to give that, I like to kind of give back for the listeners to see if you have any advice you wish you would have, you know, something you wish you would have known when you were younger to make your life easier. Is there anything you'd like to share?
I think advice-wise, I'd say just follow your dreams. Just, you know, be true to yourself, and you're never too old. I mean, I'd always wanted to be a published author, and it didn't happen until I was 54. So it's never too late. And just do. I've worked really hard all of my life. I started working part-time when I was 14. So I bought my first car when I was 17, and I've not stopped ever since. And now I've got to the point in my life where I can just take things a bit easier and do what makes me happy. And you know, my goal is to encourage more children to read and learn. So you know, they're my best pieces of advice, really, is just follow your heart and your dreams. You're never too old. Just go for it.
Yeah.
Do whatever makes you happy.
That's right. That's the important part, right? Like you said, if you're doing what you love, then you never really work a day in your life. You're just thrilled.
My job doesn't feel like work. And all the time I'm like collaborating, like when I went to the poetry jam, and I say to them, I want to collaborate. And now I've got involved in another literacy festival, and I'm going to speak there and have a stand and sell my books and do workshops. And in the interval, 6 or 7 people came up, said, yeah, I'd love to do a writing course with you, or, you know, and it just opens so many opportunities. So everywhere I go, I just say, you know, let's collaborate, let's work together. And I'm in, I have quite a big presence on Instagram, and I'm into really successful engagement groups. So I speak to people in Japan and India and lots of people in America, because it makes the world so small. And we're collaborating all the time, and the authors really supporting each other. We don't consider we're in competition. You know, we're all either aiming at different genres, or, you know, I write in rhyme and maybe another author doesn't. You know, it's not competition. It's all about, because as a team, you're stronger than as a solo. So we all really support each other, and it just opens up so many opportunities. So I just love, you know, just exploring and meeting people, and, you know, just enhancing my learning, because you're never too old to learn. Every day is a school day. Every day I learn something new. And I think it's about keeping your mind open and fresh. And I also believe that today's readers are tomorrow's leaders. And we have a responsibility to our children and other people's children to get them interested in books, because they are tomorrow's leaders. It's true.
It is true. And it's something that in the line of work that I do is we also say you change the world one child at a time, because it's with the work that you do with one child, it grows exponentially into the community and the world. So yeah, it's very important.
Every lesson shapes a life.
That's right. I love it. I love it. Oh, what is it that, do you have anything new going on? You mentioned a third book. I'm excited to hear about that. This is my own personal question here. Forget the listeners. I want to know. But
it's all about you, Danielle.
It's all about me now. Like, please tell me more. But what have you got going on? Anything new coming up that we get to look forward to?
I've got about 3/4 of the way through my next book, and it's about, as my books are all educational fiction, this one is helping them to save the planet and reduce the carbon footprint.
Oh, wow.
So Smudge teaches them ways, very simple ways, really, about what a difference they can make. You know, planting a tree, switching off a light switch, you know, just very, very simple everyday things that they can do to really make a difference to their planet, for their children and grandchildren and future generations. And they're far more on board with it than we are. You know, as I talk to children, they're telling me about recycling and you know, they love all of that. So it's going to be a great one. And again, the Saving the Planet is going to open loads of opportunities, you know, with various companies to go out and you know, kind of deliver that message. So I'm looking forward to that one coming out. But to be honest, right at the moment, because I've got jamming and I've got blast off to promote and I'm involved with so much, I don't have that much time to write. And you can only write when you're in the zone. You know, there's no point in setting 4 till 5 on a Monday, because the chances are you'll write nothing. I'm most creative in the middle of the night. So I do most of my work about, if I wake up naturally about 2 or 3 in the morning, I always take my laptop to bed and I'll probably sit up for an hour and a half and do 3 or 4 verses, and I'll tweak them the next time. But if I get my ideas down, because if you lose that creativity, you probably never remember it again. And that's the best time, because you've had some sleep. I've probably had about 4 hours sleep. So I feel refreshed, and then I feel creative. So I write, and then I get 3 or 4 more hours before I start my day again. So
wow,
that's my best time for writing. And again, everybody's different. But I certainly don't think that you should set a time to write, because I don't know how others are, but I can only write if I'm feeling creative and I'm in that zone and I'm feeling relaxed and happy, and then whatever I'm doing, you know, even if it's on my phone, I'll make a few notes if I don't have my laptop, or I'll handwrite some notes and then I'll translate that into, because you know, you get ideas from all different things at all different times. So it's about capturing that and then putting it into the story. I mean, because I write in rhyme, every book takes so much longer than if I was just to write a story. And I never wanted to be forced rhyme. So I try really hard to make it so it flows really nicely. And then probably the writing is only 50%. The editing and the poring over every word to make sure. And then I try and use extended vocabulary for the children, you know, words like kaleidoscope of colour, and you know, just different words, so they're not just language vocab that you would essentially use with a 3 to 7 year old, because when you're 6 or 7, it's important that you introduce them to you know, other phrases and words. So I'm very mindful that I want them to increase the vocabulary. And then again, it's about, you know, adults, if they don't know the meaning of the word, explaining it to them. And you know, pointing at the text for the younger children and doing things that will make their learning fun, really.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's a lot of work into it that people don't realize. And you're right about the editing. It's that back and forth that can take a lot of it's not as creative.
And it's changing people's perceptions, because you know, if you write crime drama or, you know, romantic history or something, people think that you're a really, really talented author, and they're going, oh, children's author, that's easy. And they say there's a book in everyone. That probably everyone has got an idea for a book, but not everybody could be a published author, because you know, it involves so many skills, really. And it's having the time and the inclination and the grammar knowledge and the desire to continue, because so many people start and then fail. And then I self-published my books with a local company because I wanted them to be the very best that they could be. I mean, some authors choose to self-publish on Amazon, and that's great. You know, if that's for them, that's fine. But I wanted to make them like proper published books with the top quality paper, and then my publishing company helped to get me appointments and sessions, and we do radio interviews, and we're looking at some TV work at the moment, which is quite exciting.
That is exciting.
Don't stop. You know, the world's our oyster, really, and we just keep going and exploring new opportunities.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And how can people reach you or follow you, see your work? Could you share that, and I'll write them in the comments and the description of this episode.
Yeah, I follow most people on Instagram. So it's Smudges Adventure 6 is my account on Instagram. So anybody can just send me a message, or, you know, through there. I'm on Facebook. So all the posts on Instagram go onto Facebook, which is Smudges Adventures. But I don't tend to use that. I think it's important to focus on one platform, really. So I'm very much more involved in Instagram. And then the books are for sale at all usual bookstores online, Amazon, Waterstones, Book Depository, just any online retailer, the books are available. And then on Etsy and eBay, they're sent from my home, so I can do a personalised copy and then write a message in. They have an opportunity to do a message to the child, which is nice. And then I wrap them all in tissue paper, and I've got smudge stickers. So I even make the envelopes fun, so when the child's opening it, they're thinking, wow, there's something good in here. So I think any trick that you can use to make that reading experience fun, then use it and get them engaged. So by the time they open the book, they really want to read it because they've had all of that, excitement with the unwrapping, and children love unwrapping, don't they?
Yeah, it's part of the fun, actually, the excitement. It just builds it up, so it's wonderful. And thank you. I'll make sure to add that to the description in the comments so people can follow you, and to see, at least to know when the next book is coming out and all the other workshops that you do. I think it's wonderful. I could talk to you all day, to be honest with you.
All day, Danielle, surely.
Oh my goodness! But I do have
all
one last
about
question. That's right. I do have one last question. I always ask. It's a promise that I made to a little girl. She was about 9 or 10 at the time, and I promised her I would ask everybody I interview, because this is a question that we ask children all the time. And she was asking them, and she was interviewing adults for a school project, and she was asking them that question, but nobody would answer her, and she would get rather frustrated. So her mother was saying, well, maybe you should stop asking if it's, if it angers you. So she said, no, somebody's going to get it. And when she interviewed me, I answered right away. And she turned to her mother and said, see, I told you somebody would get it. So I love that. Yeah, I told you so. So I told her I would ask. That question is, what would you like to be when you grow up?
I don't want to grow up.
Yes.
I'm 56 now, and I have no desire to grow up at all. I just want to carry on doing what I do because I love it. So I want to carry on writing. I want to carry on delivering workshops and talking and communicating with people on social media and at events. And I just want to carry on doing what I'm doing, making a difference a day at a time in the lives of young children. I don't want to change the world, but I think if all of us were kind and encourage children to read and learn in a fun and interactive way, the world would be a better place.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And this is why I love that question, because if we're lifelong learners, then we are constantly growing, we're constantly evolving. So there should be something for us to look forward to as we progress. So I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. Like I said, I could talk to you all day, and I can't wait to see the new adventures that are coming up for Smudges. And thank you again for coming on. I really appreciate it.
I've really enjoyed our chat, Danielle. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. And for everybody listening or watching, whichever channel you're on, don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe. Make sure that you follow Jane as well with all the wonderful work that she does. And we'll see you. For everybody who is watching or listening, until next time, stay safe, stay awesome, and we'll talk soon.